Maritime transport is a means of transporting passengers and/or cargo by ship, and it is developed through the sea. It allows exporting and importing merchandise around the world in various types of vessels. The merchant marine is the fleet of ships of a country, manned by sailors trained and approved by the International Maritime Organization, IMO. A high percentage of international trade is carried out on ships. Large volume and bulk cargoes are generally transported by this means, since it is more profitable in terms of costs, depending on the great distances, quantity, and weight of the merchandise. Man has built means of transportation to overcome the barriers and distances that separate him from other nations and continents. In his efforts to conquer, establish links, strengthen and develop his economic policies through national and international trade, he has found a wide-ranging tool in maritime transport. Maritime transport has a high impact on the world economy, despite the fact that it does not enjoy obvious social and public recognition, considering the various benefits it brings, especially to the daily lives of human beings, since much of what they possess has traveled before by sea. Much of the industrial and economic development of countries is possible thanks to international trade, which depends in a high percentage on maritime transport. Millions of tons have been transported in recent years in the world through this route, which has contributed billions of dollars to the economy of the entire planet. History of maritime transport. Throughout history, man has had the need to move from one place to another. Transportation has been one of the means that has allowed man to carry out discoveries, settlements, conquests, and cultural and commercial exchange. There are territories that, separated by the relief, were later united by the sea. The first means of maritime transport date back to 3500 BCC. At that time, small loads and few sailors could be carried through short coastal routes. The distances became greater and greater as technology advanced and novel materials began to be used. From the sails to the engine, warships or frigates emerged between the 14th and 17th centuries to take on the protection of overseas traffic. They were efficient in fighting corsairs due to their great speed. These boats also carried out actions during the war against enemy traffic, and the larger units assisted the ships that were in line. They functioned as radars and radios, before the appearance of these, in a kind of scouting mission on the flanks and ahead of the army to detect where the danger could be. Europe had fleets of frigates that were popular in the Cold War, and that protected against submarine and air attacks. After 200 years, navigating and transporting merchandise across the sea has had an uncontrollable and precipitous growth with the arrival of the motor. Ships have become such efficient and effective means of transport that the construction of port stations has arisen where large ships dock, forming a global connection network. The most important ports are mainly in the hands of the so-called four Asian tigers: Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, and South Korea, which have overtaken the Western economy by gaining power through maritime trade. In the West, the port of Long Beach, located in Los Angeles, also stands out. It ranks 6th among the most important on the planet. As for the European continent, Rotterdam is the most powerful representative of that region. The beginnings of modern seafaring. Sailing ships were followed by steam and motor ships. New techniques and types of boats enabled trade and created contact with distant cultures. The history of international shipping is inextricably linked to the cultural history of mankind. Cogs, naos, and caravels. Even in ancient times, trade by ship played an important role for the Greeks and Romans. From the 9th century, it was the extensive travels and raids of the Vikings that drove the development of boat building. Shipping then experienced a true heyday from the 12th century, when the merchants of the North German Hanseatic League sailed the North and Baltic seas. The Hansekogge was the standard ship for Northern Europeans for a long time. Longships, with which the Vikings had already sailed the North Sea and Baltic Sea, the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic from the 9th century, served as models. However, the Hanseatic cogs were wider than the Viking ships, and were built with a straight stern and bow and a mast instead of a high arch. They also had significantly more cargo to carry. The Hanseatic cogs were sailed with a rectangular yard and could carry around 200 tons of freight. The clinker construction method adopted from the Vikings was also typical. The ship's planks, which were bent over the fire, were nailed on top of each other like roof tiles, and then caulked, i.e., sealed with tow made of hemp, jute, and pitch. Another type of ship had already established itself in the Mediterranean region from the 7th century. The seafaring nations of Spain and Portugal, who ruled the seas at the time, mainly built so-called naos and caravels. Great explorers such as Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and Ferdinand Magellan also set sail with it. 3 masts were among the distinctive features of these ship types. They ensured that the load on the material was better distributed over the entire ship, in strong winds and heavy loads. Another feature was the so-called carvel construction. The ship's planks did not lie on top of each other, but were attached flush to each other on inner frames. This was a great advantage, especially on long voyages, as minor repairs to the ship's hull could be carried out more easily. The frame construction, according to blueprints, also led to the first ship construction in series.